All right, are you ready to dive into H2O? Just add water. We've got a ton of IMDb info and fan reactions to this Australian teen series, and let me tell you, it looks like we've got some pretty strong opinions to wade through.
You know, it's really interesting how this show, even years later, still manages to make such a splash.
Right?
It really left a mark on people, and we're seeing everything from, like fond nostalgia to some pretty harsh critiques in these reviews.
Exactly. So we're going to be swimming through the show's premise,
Yeah.
getting up close and personal with those main characters, and then really diving deep into those critiques, kind of see if they hold water.
Yeah, and we'll also be mapping the show's journey across its three seasons, and who knows, maybe we'll even get caught in a current or two of those like memorable moments that fans are still talking about.
I am so ready to get my feet wet with this one.
Right.
So for anyone out there who maybe hasn't taken the plunge, what's the basic premise of H2O?
Okay, well, picture this. You've got these three Australian teenagers, Cleo, Emma, and Rikki, and they stumble upon this mysterious Mako Island. And it's not just your typical island getaway, oh no. It's got this magical pool that transforms them into, wait for it, mermaids.
Mermaids.
Mermaids. And not just any mermaids. Each of the girls gets these unique powers over water. Cleo can control the shape of water. Emma can freeze it, and Rikki, she can actually boil water.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this teen drama, these magical transformations, and then, of course, there's that constant risk of, getting caught with their tails out.
Right.
Sounds like a recipe for some, classic soapy fun, right?
Exactly. But the real question is, does it actually manage to stay afloat when it comes to, all those classic teen drama tropes?
Yeah,
The reviews seem to have some pretty strong opinions about that.
they do. There's a lot of talk about the plots being repetitive. Like one fan even pointed out Cleo getting a job working with dolphins. I mean, talk about tempting fate.
Right.
But is that really, a fair criticism? I mean, teenagers, they do tend to find themselves in, similar situations over and over again, right?
That's a good point. It's a tough balance for any show, especially one aimed at a younger audience. You got to find fresh ways to explore those universal teen experiences, but you got to keep it engaging, too. It's a challenge.
And speaking of challenges, another thing that comes up a lot is, the dialogue and the acting. Some people find it a little bit too on the nose, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get it. That's where knowing the show's target audience really comes in. It was definitely made for a younger demographic.
Yeah.
And yeah, the writing reflects that. Some people find it charming. Others, well, maybe a little too splashy, I guess you could say.
Splashy, yeah. But you're right, even with those critiques, there's this real sense of, nostalgia. A lot of reviewers, they still have a soft spot for this show.
Yeah.
It's like they remember it as a fun escape from, real life.
That's the power of nostalgia, right? It can kind of smooth over those rough edges and let you just enjoy those simple things that you connected with back then. But you know what? Let's dive a little deeper into these characters. The reviews, they have a lot to say about their personalities and how they evolve or don't evolve throughout the series.
Yeah, let's start with Cleo.
Yeah.
She's kind of the shy, cautious one at the beginning.
Right.
But we're hearing that she goes through quite a transformation, especially in season 3.
Yeah.
Some fans love it, others not so much.
Mm-hmm.
Some find it kind of jarring.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think? Character development, or did the writers miss the mark?
That's where it gets really interesting. See, some fans argue that Cleo's shift from, timid to almost like bossy felt way too sudden. It's like the writers flipped a switch instead of it being a gradual thing. But you could also see it as like a young woman who's finding her voice, learning to stand up for herself. It's definitely something to think about.
And then you've got Emma. She's like the organized, responsible one of the group. But some people find her a bit bossy, even sometimes.
Yeah.
But what really threw fans for a loop was her just disappearing in season 3.
Yeah.
And then suddenly there's this new mermaid, Bella.
It's true. And it seems like that decision, it really made some waves with the fans.
Yeah.
Many of them felt like Bella's introduction felt really forced. And that instant friendship with Cleo and Rikki, it just didn't feel genuine.
Right.
It's a classic challenge for shows that run for a while. It's never easy to replace a character that everyone loves.
It's tough. But amidst all of this, character coming and going, there is one mermaid who just seems to consistently ride the wave of fan approval, and that's, of course, Rikki.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Rikki, the rebellious one, the quick-witted one, She really seems to have connected with viewers.
Right.
They love her sharp humor, that independent streak, and of course you can't forget the fiery romance with Zane, the classic bad boy.
Ah, Zane. Speaking of troubled waters, he starts off as this antagonist who's totally obsessed with exposing mermaids, which of course puts him at odds with the girls.
Yeah.
But then something changes.
Yeah, and that's where the tide turns, right? Zane falls for Rikki, and their relationship becomes a real highlight of the show. It's that enemies to lovers trope that we've seen a million times.
Right.
But you know what? Fans seem to agree they actually pull it off really well.
Yeah, well, at least at first. Some of the reviews suggest that Zane's character kind of takes a bit of a nosedive in season 3. He kind of falls back into some of those, not so great behaviors.
It's true. So it seems even some of the most beloved parts of the show run into some choppy waters in those later seasons.
Yeah, it really does feel like season 1 just captured a certain magic for a lot of viewers.
It does. There's a real consensus that season 1, that was something special. It had that perfect blend of wonder and humor and those relatable teenage struggles. It really captured that feeling of discovering something extraordinary and navigating those awkward years with your best friends. It's so true. But before we get too caught up in the nostalgia, let's not forget that even with all the criticisms, there's a lot of love out there for H2O. So what are some of the things that fans consistently praise about the show?
Well, one thing that keeps coming up is that pure escapism that it offers.
Mm-hmm.
It's light, it's fun, and who hasn't at some point dreamt of having magical mermaid powers?
No, right.
And the underwater scenes?
Oh, yes.
Those are always a hit. Fans rave about the visuals, how realistic the mermaid tales look, and just the overall sense of wonder that those scenes create.
It's so crucial, right? If you're going to have a show about mermaids, that underwater world has to be believable. It's got to have that magic and that visual appeal.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, of course, you can't forget the Australian setting.
Oh, for sure.
The beachy backdrops, the accents, it all adds to that escapism and gives the show this really unique flavor.
Yeah.
But beyond the visuals and the setting, what about those core relationships? Did those resonate with viewers? Oh, absolutely. The friendship between Cleo, Emma, and Rikki, especially in those first couple of seasons, it gets a lot of praise.
Yeah.
Viewers loved their dynamic, how they were always there for each other, and how their different personalities created this really believable, relatable bond.
And you can't leave out Rikki and Zane.
Oh, no.
Their journey from being at odds with each other to becoming, this couple, that's a big draw for a lot of fans. They love the chemistry, the banter, and just how their relationship evolves over time.
It's impressive, really. The writers created this really compelling romance, even with all the mermaid craziness going on.
It is. But beyond just those overarching elements, what are some of those specific moments from the fan reactions that stand out to you? What scenes or episodes really made a splash?
Well, quite a few fans brought up specific episodes like Ricky's moon episode, Bad Moon Rising, where her powers go haywire.
Right.
That one seems to have stuck with people, maybe because it showed this different side to her, a little vulnerability under that tough exterior.
Oh, that's interesting. And remember Zane's near-drowning experience?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was intense. That scene was such a roller coaster. It really showed how much Zane had changed, how much he cared about Rikki.
Yeah.
And one fan even mentioned Cleo's big transformation scene, where she turns into a mermaid right in the middle of a party. Talk about making an entrance.
Oh, that's right.
Those are the moments that you just don't forget, right? It's not just about the plot points. It's those individual scenes that really evoke, strong emotions, whether it's laughter or suspense or just pure awe.
It's true. It's those little details, those unexpected twists and turns that take a show from just being entertaining to being truly memorable.
Exactly. And speaking of twists, season 2 really upped the ante with, the introduction of Charlotte, the evil mermaid.
Oh, yeah. She really shook things up for the girls. Suddenly, there's this whole new level of danger and conflict.
Right. But, some viewers felt like the show's portrayal of some of those female relationships was a little problematic. They were concerned about that whole mean girl trope and how often female characters were pitted against each other.
That's a valid point. And it does raise some important questions about how even shows that seem lighthearted can, accidentally perpetuate certain stereotypes. It's a good reminder that we should always be thinking critically about the media we consume, even if we're just watching for fun.
Yeah. Even those stories that seem innocent can actually have an impact on how we see ourselves in the world around us.
Exactly.
But on a lighter note, who can forget that iconic theme song, No Ordinary Girl.
Yeah.
It's like an anthem for anyone who's ever dreamt of having, a secret mermaid life.
That's the sign of a truly successful show, when even the music becomes part of our culture.
Right.
It shows how the show connected with people on an emotional level, how it tapped into those universal desires for adventure and, that desire to be something more than just ordinary.
So we've explored the premise, the characters, the good, the bad, the highs and lows. It seems like H2O is a show that's both loved and criticized, and often for the very same reasons. It's a show that's clearly sparked a lot of strong emotions and generated so much conversation, even all these years later.
It's true. And that's what makes the step dive so fascinating. It's not just about, breaking down a teen drama. It's about exploring nostalgia, how our perceptions change over time, and just how powerful storytelling can be in the way it connects with us on all these different levels.
And as we move into the next part of our deep dive, we're going to be tackling one of the most interesting questions that these fan reactions have brought up. Did H2O actually empower its female characters? Or did it unintentionally kind of, take away their agency as the show went on?
It's a tricky question with no easy answers, and one that's sure to make some waves as we continue to explore the world of H2O. Just add water.
Welcome back. So we've, dipped our toes into H2O, explored the premise, the characters, and those initial reactions.
Yeah.
But now let's navigate those currents of change, specifically the journey from season 1 to season 3.
Yeah, okay, so we've established that season 1 holds a special place in a lot of fans' hearts, myself included. But what exactly changes in those later seasons? I mean, beyond, the obvious cast changes.
Well, one major shift is the overall tone. Season 1 had this, light, bubbly energy. It was all about the girls discovering their powers, having those adventures, figuring out this whole mermaid life. But then seasons 2 and 3, they bring in some choppier waters.
Okay.
They start introducing some darker elements, some more complex storylines.
Yeah, you're right. Remember Charlotte, the so-called evil mermaid we mentioned?
Mm-hmm.
She definitely brought this whole different energy to the show. It suddenly felt a lot more, dangerous than season 1. Exactly. With Charlotte, the girls are suddenly facing, not just these external threats, but they're also dealing with, internal conflicts, jealousy, betrayal, and the fact that their powers could fall into the wrong hands. It definitely ups the stakes. There's a lot more suspense.
But some fans felt like, bringing in those darker elements, it kind of came at the cost of that, initial charm.
Right.
That lightheartedness that people loved about season 1.
Yeah.
So did the show kind of lose some of its magic by trying to be more, serious?
Yeah, it's a good point. Balancing those elements, keeping that core appeal while you're trying to explore these more mature themes, that's tough for any show. Some fans might have preferred if it had just stayed in those, shallower waters, kept the focus on the friendships, the mermaid hijinks, those classic teenage struggles.
And then there's Emma leaving in season 3.
Oh, yeah.
Which, that was huge for a lot of viewers.
Yeah.
You said earlier, it's never easy to replace a beloved character, and it seems like H2O really struggled with that.
Yeah, it did. Emma, she represented this stability of, responsibility in the group. She was the voice of reason, the planner, always trying to keep things from spiraling out of control. And her dynamic with Cleo and Rikki, that was a huge part of why people loved the show. So when she left, it left this this void that was really hard to fill.
And her replacement, Bella, she just didn't really make the same impact.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of fans found her, less interesting. And that whole instant best friend thing with Cleo and Rikki, it just felt, fake. The writers were trying too hard to force a connection that wasn't really there.
It's a classic trap, isn't it? Trying to recreate that magic, that chemistry of a group that's already established. It's so hard. And sometimes it's those little things, those unspoken bonds between characters. Those are the hardest to manufacture.
And it wasn't just the girls who went through changes.
Yeah.
Right? Zane. Remember, he starts off as this arrogant guy who's obsessed with proving that mermaids exist. And he becomes a much more likable character, right? He becomes Ricky's love interest. But even his development hits a snag in season 3.
Yeah, and that inconsistency, that's what throws some viewers off. They were invested in Zane's, redemption arc. And then suddenly he's slipping back into those old behaviors, being possessive. So it makes you wonder, did the writers forget about his character development? Or were they purposely trying to create some drama in his relationship with Rikki?
Right. It's what were they thinking? It's interesting, isn't it? We see this pattern of Like characters either changing way too fast or just, going back to who they were before. It almost feels like the writers were trying to shake things up, but maybe they went a little too far.
It's possible, right? Maybe they were thinking, okay, the audience is growing up, the people who loved those early seasons, maybe they want something with a bit more edge, a little more drama. But in doing that, did they end up pushing away the very fans that, made the show a success in the first place? It's tricky. It's all about balance. And H2O, well, it might have tipped the scales a little too far in one direction.
But let's not forget, season 2 also introduced some pretty interesting ideas that really worked.
Oh, yeah.
Like the fact that there were other mermaids out there.
Right.
Some with, different powers and different motives. That really expanded the whole mythology of the show, right? It opened up this whole new world of possibilities.
Oh, for sure. Taking the story beyond just those three girls, that was smart. It let them bring in new threats, new allies, add more layers to everything. It kept things interesting, stopped the story from getting, too small and self-contained.
But not every new thing they tried worked, right?
Right.
Like some fans were not on board with that whole water tentacle thing in season 3.
Oh, yeah.
It felt like a bit too much, even for a show about mermaids. It was like this random element they threw in just to make it seem more dangerous, but it didn't really fit with, everything else we knew about the show.
That's a perfect example of how, pushing the boundaries of fantasy can sometimes backfire.
Yeah.
If something new feels too out of place, too disconnected from what's already established, it just comes across as jarring, even nonsensical.
It's like they wanted to add this, high-stakes drama, but it ended up feeling forced and unnatural.
Exactly. Sometimes less is more, especially with a show like H2O where, the heart of it is those characters and those everyday struggles, those relatable moments, all set against this backdrop of this amazing secret they share. So when they lean too hard into those really fantastical elements, it kind of took away from that. It lost that heart.
It's amazing how these creative decisions can still spark such strong opinions even years later.
Yeah.
It really shows just how invested people get in these characters and these stories.
That's the power of storytelling, isn't it? It pulls you into these fictional worlds, you connect with the characters, you experience this whole range of emotions. And even when a show makes mistakes, even when it does things we disagree with, it still creates conversations, debates. It shows you how much of an impact it had.
You're right. And let's face it, even with its flaws, H2O had some really great moments.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who can forget the girls swimming gracefully through the water, those shimmering tails, or those first times they try to use their powers, all that awkwardness.
Oh, I remember that.
So funny. Those are the moments that, really stick with you.
Yeah,
It's not just the plot. It's those specific scenes that make you laugh, keep you on the edge of your seat, or just leave you in awe.
Those are the moments that transcend the criticism. They remind us of that, pure escapism, that joy that the show gave us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how can we forget that super catchy theme song?
Oh, right.
No Ordinary Girl. It's basically an anthem for anyone who's ever wished they were a mermaid.
That's true. It captures the whole spirit of the show, the wonder, the friendship, that sense of anything is possible. It's no wonder that song resonated with so many people.
So where do we go from here? We've traced the show's evolution. We've talked about the highs and lows, the things it did well, the missteps. What's the takeaway for our listener? Someone who might be thinking about rewatching or maybe even discovering H2O for the first time.
That's a great question. We've really gone deep into the show's journey, analyzed what worked, what didn't, highlighted how fans feel about it, and really explored how those creative decisions played out. But at the end of the day, it's up to each person to decide how they want to experience H2O.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll get swept up in the nostalgia, relive those early seasons, and reconnect with their teenage selves. Or maybe they'll watch it with a more critical eye, seeing the flaws, but still appreciating, the things that make it special. Either way, we hope this deep dive has given them a better understanding of this show, helped them see how unique it was, and appreciate its place in TV history.
And even if the show itself doesn't totally hold up.
Yeah.
Now that we're adults, you got to remember the impact it had back then. It sparked imaginations. It made people dream of mermaid magic.
And that kind of legacy, that's something to celebrate, even if it comes with a little bit of, rose-tinted nostalgia. But as we're getting ready to resurface from our deep dive into H2O, there's this one more thing we got to explore.
Wait, what? There's more. I thought we covered everything.
Oh, remember remember those fan reactions we talked about?
Yeah.
Some of them brought up these really thought-provoking points about, like, how the show portrayed gender roles
Mm.
and how the focus might have shifted, maybe away from the female characters and more towards the male characters.
Oh, yeah, you're right. We did touch on that. But those are definitely points worth exploring more. It's like even a show about teenage mermaids can accidentally reinforce these, societal norms. And it's important to be aware of that.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And that brings us to a big question. Did H2O really empower its female characters? Or did it, maybe without meaning to, take away some of their power as it went on? It's a complicated issue, and we'll be tackling it head-on in the final part of our deep dive.
All right, so we're back, and we're finally going to tackle this question. Did H2O really empower its female characters, or did things shift and maybe even, take away some of their agency as the show progressed?
It's a great question, and one that's definitely sparked some debate among fans. Let's not forget, the show starts with these three incredible girls, each with these unique powers, and they have this bond that's formed by this, extraordinary secret. They face challenges head-on, they support each other through all those mermaid mishaps, and of course, those typical teenage problems.
Yeah, and it's not always just, sunshine and perfect synchronized swimming, right?
Yeah.
They argue, they disagree. Sometimes they're even competing with each other. And their friendship felt real because it wasn't always, picture perfect.
Exactly. It showed that strong female friendships can survive those tough moments. Disagreements don't have to ruin everything. And also, their powers, those weren't just cool special effects. They symbolized something about each of the girls, their inner strengths, how they approach things differently.
Right, like Cleo being able to control the shape of water, Emma with her freezing powers, Rikki being able to boil water. It wasn't random. It actually reflected parts of their personalities, how they dealt with problems. It added this layer of, symbolism, which was cool.
Yeah, it did. But then as the show went on, some viewers felt like things started to change. Like the male characters, especially Lewis and Zane, they started to take over a bit more.
Yeah, that's what some of the fan reactions pointed out, right? That Lewis went from this helpful, science-y guy to, often being the one who moves the plot forward, making the big decisions. And Zane, well, his transformation from bad boy to love interest was great at first, but then some people felt like he became a little too controlling in his relationship with Rikki.
Yeah, and it's a valid observation. If the male supporting characters start to dominate the story, it can, even if it's unintentional, take away from the female leads and their power.
And what about Cleo's personality change in season 3? Was that real character development, like her finding her voice? Or were the writers just trying to force her into that, stereotypical strong female character mold? And in doing so, they kind of took away some of that vulnerability that made her so relatable in the beginning.
That's the debate, isn't it? Where's the line between genuine growth and those potentially harmful tropes? And we also can't ignore the criticism about how the show uses that classic mean girl trope, putting female characters against each other in these petty rivalries.
It makes you realize that even a show about teenage mermaids, something that seems so lighthearted, can still get caught up in those societal norms, those stereotypes that we're trying to move away from.
Yeah, for sure. It's a reminder that we have to be aware of those messages, even when we're just watching something for entertainment. It's not about, attacking the show or the people who made it, but just being aware, recognizing what it does well, but also its shortcomings.
It's important to remember when the show was made, too, right? I mean, back when H2O was first on TV, the conversations about, representation and gender dynamics, they were different. What might have seemed progressive then, we might view it differently now.
Right, exactly. We can't judge a show solely based on what we think today without understanding how things have changed, how we talk about these things now.
So for someone listening who might be thinking about rewatching H2O or maybe checking it out for the first time, what do you think is the most important thing for them to keep in mind?
Well, I think it's important to remember that H2O is more than just a fun escapist show about mermaids. It reflects the time it was made in. Some parts of it line up with those societal norms, while other parts actually challenge them. And that's what makes it so interesting to go back and watch it now, to discuss it.
It gives people a chance to enjoy the nostalgia, reconnect with how they felt as teenagers, but also to watch it with a new perspective, see those flaws, and maybe even have those important conversations about representation, agency, and how stories can be so powerful.
That's it. It's about appreciating what the show was, while understanding that our views on these topics have changed since then. And at the end of the day, it's up to each person to decide how they interpret those messages, what resonates with them.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into H2O, just add water. we want to leave you with this thought. Can a show made for a younger audience be entertaining and also make us think about those bigger societal issues? Or is it on us, the viewers, to really engage with what we're watching and think critically about it?
Maybe that's the real legacy of H2O. It's not just a mermaid show, it's a reflection of how we understand ourselves and the world, and that understanding keeps changing. And because of that, it keeps making us think. It keeps inviting us to go deeper, to explore what it all means.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into H2O. Just add water. We hope you'll keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never let go of those mermaid dreams.
And remember, there's always more to discover beneath the surface.